In this video, we're going to look at something which I think is absolutely fascinating. One guitar in 3 different configurations. I had the opportunity to rebuild, to modify a guitar, changing out the neck and the bridge material. I took that same guitar and sent it off to Will McNicol on 3 separate occasions, and we're going to jump on Zoom. So join us because it is utterly fascinating.
So that was Topsy.
Yeah.
What are your first impressions after hearing that there, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, the difference is very audible, right? It's very, very noticeable. I think, especially for me, the difference between the necks is the biggest contrast for me. Yeah. You know, the switch from the sycamore or the maple neck to the rosewood neck, honestly, the difference for me was quite overwhelming. Mm-hmm. You know, we're overwhelming in so much as we're talking about subtle nuance, right? But
overwhelmingly subtle.
Yes, yeah. And then, you know, the difference again is audible with the bridge swap. Sure. But for me, the biggest change is with the neck. You know, obviously it's very difficult to put words to that. But I think for me, the original iteration, so the maple, the original guitar has a much more, it has a flatter sound. It sounds much more like a nylon strung guitar, I think. The sound is the tone is more fundamental. I feel like you're not getting as much of the high end clarity, the overtone content that you might that I think you hear with the rosewood neck. But I feel like, to my ear, the addition or the swap to the rosewood neck just adds a bit more heft, a bit more body, and a bit more balance to the overall sound of the instrument. What would you say?
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, there's big difference, as you say, when the neck changes. And for me, that some of the things that I often listen out for when I'm listening to different guitar recordings, that I'll try and focus on one thing at a time to try and make it manageable. So, for example, one of the things that I noticed quite particularly was how the treble strings responded, and there definitely seemed to be a very kind of quite a bright, almost like quite shrill-like tone to the original iteration of the guitar, the maple. And then when the neck changed to rosewood, it had the impact to me of it kind of rounding that off a little bit, giving a little bit more depth and maybe a little bit more body behind those notes, which probably chimes in with some of the things that you were saying in your response just there. So that was my initial thoughts. And then again, when we look at the iteration where we have the bridge changed as well, the difference is more subtle there. But again, it feels like it just levels up to a slightly more balanced sound again, like to me, and it reaches that point. Because the other thing that I noticed with the when the neck changes is it does seem to become a little bit more full in the mid range as well, and I felt like that kind of balanced out nicely with the bridge changing to Rosewood. So yeah, interesting. I mean, we can jump back into the video if you like, and we can just stop when you hear something which is very, very obvious you want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, before we do that, one thing, it's interesting that so would you say that which configuration would you say was your favorite?
I think based on that, I think where we had the Rosewood neck and the Rosewood bridge together,
Okay.
that felt like my personal favorite because it ticked a lot of the boxes that I like.
Yes.
Just for my own personal playing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's my gut instinct anyway.
So I guess we'll get on to some of the theory behind the configurations and the configuration changes and how that theoretically should impact the tone, perhaps later in the video. But I think for me, just curiously, I actually think I prefer the maple bridge.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
and what is? Can you put that into words?
Yeah, I think for me, listening to the recordings, the addition of the Rosewood bridge, and this feels counterintuitive to me as a builder, but it almost added a little bit too much. It felt almost a little sterile, actually.
Interesting.
Or no, sterile's the wrong word. Clinical.
Okay.
I think it was almost too articulate, a little bit too bright, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe just to my ear, if I was listening blind to this, which I have done, the kind of second iteration seems to appeal to me. But we'll get into that in a little bit more depth once we've listened to through to the clips.
Okay. Should we jump back in and we can pause if there's something that we want to talk about?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay. So let's head back to the beginning of Topsy, and we can just let me know if you want to stop at any point in talking about anything. Okay. Yeah. I think it's so obvious at that point the difference in character, and again it helps me to kind of focus on certain things, and to me the response of that treble string is quite different. That first string and the way that it has brightness and a delicateness with the double maple situation here. The all maple situation, and then when we change the neck, it changes, has more body behind it, more of that overtone content, like you say.
To me, it's almost like double cream versus skimmed milk.
That is a very nice way of putting it. Yeah. I'm on board. I'm on board with that analogy.
If treble response had a mouth feel,
yeah,
I think that would be it.
Mm-hmm. I think you're bang on. Yeah, spot on. Let's keep going a little bit further.
I mean, it's the same again there, isn't it? It's quite apparent there.
It is. It's very, very apparent. What I'm trying to do as well now is listen to the other elements of the sound, especially the mid-range, and hearing the differences there, because they are definitely apparent, as well as you move between them. And I think, again, I think that those words like depth probably are the ones that I would be reaching for first of all, even though I know that they are. Yeah, it's very, very loose terms, obviously, but I think that's what I would reach for when that neck changes.
Yeah, dynamic range, perhaps. Would that
Maybe
be?
So.
Yeah. Let's keep
Absolutely.
going. I think one thing that's jumping out to me there as well is the if we think about attack and decay, just how the quality of the initial response from the string is quite pleasing. I like the sound of the guitar, but that note, that fundamental character of the note does die away quite quickly with the first configuration of the guitar, with the maple, I would say. Whereas the sustain and the kind of body and overtone content, the complexity of the note, I feel, is much more pronounced with that neck change.
Yeah, I totally agree, and you've put it into some good words, because I do sometimes struggle finding the words to describe this stuff, but that's spot on. I'm listening more and more, and the body of those treble strings, particularly in this section here we've got to, where we're kind of high up the neck, very pleasing to me with the Rosewood, to my personal preferences, so let's keep going a little bit further. So in that section there, we're bringing in some of the lower sounds, some of the bass strings there, some of the lower harmonies around the fourth string and third string. I found it slightly more challenging to pick apart differences between the Rosewood neck with the maple bridge and the Rosewood and Rosewood. There's still obviously quite profound changes with the all maple guitar in between them, but it seemed a little bit more subtle in that range to me. Yeah, I don't know if that came across to you, but
yeah, I mean, when I was listening to this, I was reminded of my initial feeling about the guitar, which was I don't know if you remember, or how well you can remember it in its first configuration. Just how lightweight that guitar was. Like, it was the lightest guitar I'd ever made. It was paper light. And I remember when I was building it, thinking to myself, I don't know how this is going to hold up to the not structurally, but how those bass frequencies are gonna hold up. I kind of felt like it might just kind of, as Irvin Samoji would say, fart out. It would just kind of, it would be too lightly constructed, and it wouldn't have enough punch. But listening again to this, I'm really, I'm reminded of just how much I like the bass response of this guitar. But like you say, it does appear to be the differences between the three guitars are less noticeable in those lower registers, it would seem. Yeah, it's super fascinating. So should we jump into the next piece? Let's do it.
So this is the next one we'll be looking at is Chumpman Blues, which was originally written by Blind Blake in open D tuning, much more rhythmic, a little bit more aggressively played, less space between the notes, so comparing slightly different elements of a guitar's response, I suppose. Whilst Topsy was nice because it had a little bit of room for the guitar to breathe and sustain around chords, harmonies and melodies and everything else, this one is much more punchy. So yeah, let's dive in.
Let's do it.
Right.
So, a couple of things. Come on. I feel like this is peak McNicol. I would call it a bass phase, but of course it's not a bass phase. A guitar phase.
Oh yeah, man, there's some peaches in here. My goodness.
There is some absolute belters in here. It really does look like this is like just before I need to drag you away from clobbering somebody in the club after they've like tried to pull your misses.
Yeah, there's definitely. I mean, oh man. What really made me laugh is the kind of juxtaposition between the first iteration of me and then the other two. It was almost like, we got these three twins, one of whom is mad and the other two are just getting a little bit irritated at the mad one of the three. But in all seriousness, like, it does paint another little image, doesn't it, of one thing that perhaps isn't so consistent is my headspace between these recordings. And the first one, obviously, a bit of a blues blowout with this piece. Not thinking that, in like next year I'm going to be recording this again. I better, behave myself. And then in the other two, I'm just listening to myself, desperately trying to recreate the same feel and vibes. There was way more concentration in the other two, which is
like desperately like must not fuck it up.
No, exactly, and it's quite funny, isn't it?
That is testament to your playing, man. That was really seamless.
Well, it was a fun thing. I'm not sure how much I enjoyed rewatching the first iteration and my facial expressions, but anyway, that's not what this video is about. We should talk about the tonal differences, and I think that this backs up a lot of what we said, obviously, in the first conversation when we were talking about Topsy, but it reiterated the fact that I'm finding it quite tricky to decipher a huge difference in the bass response between the iterations of the guitar where we have the Rosewood neck. So it had the Rosewood neck and the maple bridge, and the Rosewood neck and the Rosewood bridge. They feel very similar to one another to my ears in this. I don't know how that felt to you.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Whether or not that is just because there's so much information coming at you so quickly with this piece that it's hard to actually grasp onto anything substantive when it comes to, you can hear with this particular piece or this section here that it's remarkably different from the other. Just as an observation about the three guitars or the three configurations, I actually think that the first configuration suits this style of piece the best.
That's interesting. Okay, and what is it about that you think works so well for a piece like this? This guitar, the first iteration, Blanca as it was, to me has that kind of vintage Martin sound to it. It has a guitar, it has a sound that seems to befit the style of piece. I don't know. It does have that kind of that fundamental tone to it. There's not too much in the way of, tonal complexity or shimmery kind of information that sits on top of everything else that might, in a piece like this, kind of get in the way. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I do.
So, I think the kind of dry, fundamental, not overly broad tonal spectrum I think it works nicely for this piece.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, man. Makes a lot of sense given the style of the piece, the era from which it comes. Doesn't necessarily gel with that kind of the more modern idea of a steel string acoustic being very overtone rich, very resonant, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, no, I'm totally with you there. Should we dip back in and just have a little skip through and we can stop if there's anything we want to chat about?
pause it there,
Yeah.
if you would. I think for me, actually in this video, I prefer the final iteration, configuration 3, the most. You know, when I listen to that guitar, it sounds to me, this is going to sound weird, but it sounds to me like one of my guitars.
Right.
You know,
Okay.
it has that kind of high fidelity, hi-fi sound that I'm looking for in my instruments, and that tone right there feels very current, and it feels very well-rounded and balanced. Quite a modern sound as well. That just sprung to me then.
I'm with you, and that certainly chimes with my thoughts. Again, I was like, the last iteration here, the double use of Rosewood, just it feels like the kind of guitar that I would want, you know, for my own personal sensibilities. It's got a bit of warmth, it's got a bit of roundness in it. But what I will also say is, having heard your comments about how well the first iteration suits this style of piece, and having listened to the opening kind of phrases with that in my mind, I totally agree. It's got a real kind of like bright, direct, kind of almost like jangliness to it, which I really love for this style of piece. So it kind of gets rounder and softer as it goes on, which is very, very lovely, and I do like that a lot. It's kind of one of the things that appeals to me. But yeah, from a stylistic point of view, I might have reached for Blanca, the first guy, if the task was specifically to record this piece. So we'll continue the journey through Chuntman Blues here. Great faces there. But the other thing that I noticed about the Blanca as well, that bite in the treble just really cuts through nicely in this piece, and especially in this kind of open tuning of open D, where the resonance of the lower strings can sometimes overpower. Having a treble that can really bite through all of that is kind of quite nice. When there's a lot of melodic content on it, which there is in this. So yeah. Let's continue. Oh mate, I don't know what's going on. I feel like we're my face is now distracting from the purpose of this video.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's good. I'm all for it. Yeah, I mean, again, it's just really interesting stuff to listen to and try and pick out those differences, where there are some which are very, very subtle and there are some which are way more pronounced. But I do, for this particular piece, you know, the original iteration, Blanca, it's got something about it, you know, even though it wouldn't necessarily be the one that I would reach to just if I was going to own any of the three. I would lean towards the final iteration with the double use of Rosewood. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously with a custom instrument, there are so many factors to consider in terms of, you know, aesthetics is such a big one, but obviously the sound is the other like major factor here. Of course.
And you know, I think, again, listening back to these three configurations, or these three versions of this essentially same guitar, there are instances where I prefer one over the other. and it is worth just reiterating that this is as a preference rather than
of course.
This is better, better than one or the other, because for everyone who likes one version, there's going to be somebody else who prefers the other version. All right, so I think it would be useful. Obviously, I think towards the end of this video, I'm going to talk about some of the theory, some of the ideas and concepts behind why the guitar sounds the way that it does in each of its configurations. But I'd love to hear your perspective as a player in terms of how those changes, how those modifications to the instrument's structure impacted your experience of it.
Sure. I mean, it's a really interesting kind of experiment, really, because I've never done anything like this before, being given like the same guitar kind of 3 times with something changed each time. It's like trying to spot the difference, those little games where you have to circle the differences of what each one was, and the gap of time between each iteration obviously acted as a bit of a palate cleanser, to the point where I could just kind of have a fairly objective look of the instrument as it was there, without being too influenced by what it was, because I don't have enough of a memory for that. So then looking back at these and hearing those differences is really interesting, because it's not like at the time of recording I was able to discern the differences. I didn't have a clear picture of how the previous iteration sounded, certainly not enough for me to pick it apart. And to be honest with you, I think the feeling that came to me when I was playing between them is that they just felt incredibly similar. Of course, it just felt like the same instrument. So one of the things I was really interested in with this experiment was actually going back to those recordings and actually hearing the differences and being reminded of them. And it does paint a picture, I think, that the neck does have quite a big impact on the overall sound of an instrument. And then again, it's also interesting for me to go through that thought process of how to articulate those differences. And
of course, yeah.
Because it's never easy to do so. But yeah, an interesting challenge. And I think that if the opportunity ever arose for any reason, maybe again, it would be interesting to revisit, maybe with some other elements changing. Perhaps you could build a guitar with this idea in mind, one that is constantly evolving and being experimented with. But yeah, thoroughly enjoyable and really interesting. I'd be really interested to hear people's comments actually down below.
Yes.
Just to hear what other people's feelings and thoughts are on this. Like, what was your favourite, and could you discern the differences, and how would you articulate them?
Yeah, what words would you put to that?
Exactly. Did you agree with what I was saying and what Tom was saying, or did you have a different way of listening to it? Because that's so interesting to me. So yeah, I'd find that really interesting to read.
Yeah, me too. I think perhaps in the comments as well, people could put out their suggestions for modifications that they would like to see on a guitar, with a view to hearing how it affected the sound.
Yeah.
When we decided to kind of play with this, I really wish we'd gone about it in a slightly more scientific way, but I think we did a really great job with what we could do, given that it was essentially an afterthought.
Yeah, it was, and it wasn't helped by the fact that I'd moved kind of studio spaces between the recordings, obviously. But all of those things considered, I think we had enough similarities between the recordings to get a bit of an idea of the differences between these variations. So yeah, a lot of fun. And yeah, if the opportunity arose again, we'd do it again even better.
I mean, you know me, I feel like any excuse to fuck about with guitars.
Yeah, absolutely.
My mind is buzzing with ideas on this. So, but anyway, listen, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to indulge me with this project and doing such a fabulous job with the recordings and the edits and all of these things. So
yeah, no worries at all. Cheers, Tom.
So let's wrap it up here, and we'll speak again soon.
Yep. Cheers, mate.
Awesome.
Catch you soon. Bye.
Hopefully you found that as fascinating as I did. I feel like I could have dissected those videos for hours. just mind-blowing stuff. I wanted to just quickly, before this video wraps up, just chat about the kind of theory behind what's going on here. I think, you know, I get asked about the neck a lot and how it impacts the sound of a guitar. As I've said earlier, we've built with loads of different species, from your traditional mahogany, Spanish cedar, cherry, wenge, walnut, and it all imparts a different kind of flavor to the instrument. I think with this guitar, I wanted to choose a neck material that was vastly different to the original, which was European maple or English sycamore. So we went with some Honduran rosewood. And obviously, if you've ever handled these two materials, you will know that the rosewood is extremely dense, and it has a stiffness which is far superior to the maple. I remember going and seeing a seminar with the brilliant Ken Parker when he was talking about the impact of the neck, this very topic, the impact of a neck on the sound of a guitar. With Ken's arch tops, he uses a beautiful construction which has it's a Douglas fir core with a then wrapped in high temperature carbon fiber with then a decorative wood veneer on the outside. So he has this incredible composite structure for the neck of his guitar. And he was talking about how if you look at old Fender basses, right, you know, really long maple necks, you could actually see them oscillating, you know, you could see them moving. And he would say that, you know, the neck is an oscillator. And so that really kind of stuck with me. And I think that with the Honduran rosewood neck, you are removing you are removing some of the, I think with the Honduran rosewood neck, because it is so much more dense than the maple neck, because it is so much more stiff, it is less likely to oscillate, or it's going to take a significant amount more energy, much more than is perhaps being generated by the vibration of the strings, to get that neck moving. You know, that neck is rock solid, it is really stiff, and so the energy that you are putting into those strings is less likely to be wasted moving that guitar neck around as perhaps it was doing with the maple. And again, this is kind of theoretical, but it's nice to kind of think about this. So with that in mind, you know, Will and I were talking about those kind of the body, you know, the body of the notes. We're thinking about the upper partials, the harmonics, the overall complexity and fullness of those notes. And I think the fact that energy that wasn't being wasted moving the neck around was able to be to generate sound and to be moving the soundboard, which is what we want. So I think that is that was really interesting, that the kind of theory translated into an audible response. The kind of trade-off here was that, you know, a rosewood neck is dense and it's heavy, and that guitar, it did want to neck dive. You know, as I said in the video, the body of the guitar was very light, and so from an ergonomic perspective, the European maple neck was a better choice because it didn't want to neck dive as much as the rosewood neck did. So moving on to thinking about the bridges, you know, typically you want a bridge to be as low mass and lightweight as possible. Again, for the same reasons, if you have a bridge which is high mass, which is heavy, which is dense, it's going to take a lot more energy to get that thing moving. Conversely, or with that in mind, a more massive bridge is perhaps more likely to have impact the monopole of the guitar top. It's going to give you a more bass heavy response to the guitar. So it was interesting that we had, you know, two bridges, one which was maple and it was very lightweight, and then one which was rosewood, which was a little bit more massive, again a little bit more stiff. What was interesting about the Rosewood bridge is that I actually had to make it a little bit deeper, a little bit bigger. The footprint was a little bit bigger because of when I removed the maple bridge, you know, it damaged the lacquer a little bit. I didn't want to have to respray the whole face of the guitar, so I just made the bridge the footprint of the bridge a little bit bigger. So the bridge was more massive and it was more stiff. And again, we're talking about trade-offs here, but I think that you can hear that when the Rosewood bridge was on the guitar, again, as Will pointed out, it just had a little bit extra body, a little bit more warmth, a little bit more clarity as a result, perhaps, of that slight increase in density. I have to say that, you know, I think I preferred the second configuration with the Rosewood neck and the maple bridge. But yeah, it's fascinating stuff, and I was really glad that we could do this and that we could record it and share it with you guys. So please do let me know what you think. I'd love to hear what you guys heard, which one you preferred, and if you've ever swapped out a component on your guitar and it's made an impact, let me know what it was. Let me know how you felt like it changed the instrument, and you know, maybe we'll make a video series on this in the future. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch. Please like and subscribe for more, and we'll see you again soon.